Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Spotlight Games podcast. My name is Patrick Schweigert and I am joined by my sweet boy, that man with the face, Cayman Darty. How are you, Cayman?
I'm doing great, Patrick. How about yourself?
I'm good. For those audio listeners, you just missed an entrance, our very first entrance of a podcast with Cayman. So go over to our YouTube and give that a look because that was, how do I say, entertaining. Cayman. That was a fun little face. Cool. Well, why don't we let's just rip off the Band-Aid. Let's just jump in with some housekeeping. How do you feel about that?
Let's just jump in, bro.
Let's just jump in. We have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each and every week we're going to talk about the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, why don't you rate us? Why don't you review us? We'd love it if you would do that. Tell your friends about us. You can be on the show by emailing us your thoughts and questions to mail@spotlightgames.net, or you can DM us on Twitter at SpotGamesPod or on Instagram at SpotlightGamesPodcast. The newest episode of Safe Trash Cinema is out. It's been out for about a week and a half now for St. Patrick's Day. Leprechaun was the episode. This week, we are recording our next episode, Cayman. Are we ready to reveal to our audience what the next movie is, or are we still keeping it a secret?
No, we are ready to go. But before I tell you what the next episode is, I do want to say we have released our first ever mini-sode.
Yes.
The mini-sodes are going to be short form content. They're going to be shorter episodes, 30 minutes or less. Just to kind of bridge the gap. You know, we want everyone who listens to Safe Trash Cinema to have more Safe Trash Cinema. And so on the first mini-sode, which is available to you right now, we do a spoiler-free review of the Hulu original Fresh, starring Daisy Edgar Jones and Sebastian Stan, and I highly recommend it. Now, for the next episode of Safe Trash Cinema, we're doing The Room. Now, would not, for me at least, per se, consider The Room to be a typical trash cinema film.
Sure.
It was released on VHS and DVD
It is
when it first
trash.
came out. Oh boy, it is a bad movie, and you've probably seen it. And if you haven't seen it, you've probably seen The Disaster Artist. Well, we're covering the original film, The Room, starring one Tommy Wiseau. And let me tell you, it is going, and I'm just going to say this before we even record it, I can tell you, it's going to be a great time.
Oh, yeah.
So tune in next week on Tuesday as normal, and check out the newest episode of Save Trash Cinema. You guys are going to love it.
One of the most quotable movies to ever happen. I have seen that movie
100%.
like 4 times at this point, so I almost feel like I don't need to watch it before we record. I will, but that is, that is a shit movie.
It's bad,
to say the least.
You know, our audience loves shit movies.
They love shit movies. Well, Cayman, we have a great show for our listeners here today for the Spotlight Games podcast. We're going to be announcing the winner of our Elden Ring contest. So make sure you listen through the rest of the episode for that. We do have a winner that has been pulled. They're listening right now. They have no idea that they're going to be winning. We're also going to be announcing that on socials on Thursday as well when this episode releases. So keep an eye out there. We have a reviews roundup for Strangers of Paradise, the newest iteration of a Final Fantasy spinoff. A week or so ago, IGN released a top 10 open world games of all times list. So we're going to judge the shit out of that.
Hell yeah.
I finished Horizon Forbidden West, and I platinumed it. So we're going to have a little spoiler discussion at the end of the show as well. This might sound like it's going to be just a big old full show, and it is. But first, let's jump in with what we're playing and have a little discussion about Elden Ring, because you have been playing a lot of Elden Ring, Cayman.
Yeah.
I've played about an hour of Elden Ring, so I have like nothing to say about it because I spent so much time playing Horizon. But give us your sweet impressions about this hard as absolute shit game, Elden Ring.
Yeah. So if you listen to the previous episode of Spotlight Games, you would have heard how I ended up purchasing a copy of Elden Ring and realized that it was potentially a mistake. And I have to tell you, Patrick was right. Yeah, Patrick was right. And
put it on the board. Patrick's first point. Because he's already missed like 3 of his 10 predictions. 1 point on the board. I said that Elden Ring would be the first Souls game that came and actually gets into and likes, and he's 30 hours in, baby.
I'm 30 hours into Elden Ring.
We did it.
So a couple things here I do want to address. So first and foremost, I'm 30 hours into Elden Ring. And one of our listeners reached out to me recently and asked me, Cayman, how do you have so much time? Or how do you allocate your time to be able to play these games? And I do want to take just a brief moment. Patrick is completely unaware of this, so this is completely coming off. Do you want to let the audience know? As of November of last year, I left the position at the company I was working at. I did it for mental health reasons. I was burned out, was going through a tough time, and honestly, just couldn't handle it anymore. And so I took some time off to focus on my own mental health, which, look, I think, we can all address here as adults. I think it's important to take care of your own mental health. And I think it's important to put yourself first. I think a lot of people don't do that, and bad things lead to that. So I did. I have just accepted a position in a new company, so I'll be starting soon. So my time playing games will be reduced.
Sure.
But during that time frame, I have had the luxury to be able to put time into a bunch of games while doing other things to be able to kind of reset and refocus my own headspace. But when I say that, I also want to point out that we are small time creators. We don't get codes, we don't get free games, we don't get anything. We come out of pocket for a lot of stuff. And we want to bring you guys the latest and the greatest and pretty much everything that you want to hear. But by doing so, we are coming out of our own pocket. Running a show like this is not cheap. We're coming out of pocket, like I said, for every single game that we review, that we bring to you, we pay for on our own. So this goes from Spotlight Games to anyone else, any other small time creators you guys watch, whether it's another podcast or whether it's YouTube or whoever. A lot of times these creators don't have that luxury that some of the larger content creators do have. So if there's a way for you to support them, whether it's by listening or whatnot, do so. It means a ton to us, and it helps us be able to provide you and bring to you this sort of content. With that being said, though, yeah, I really like Elden Ring.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I don't like about Elden Ring. But compared to the things I really like about Elden Ring, it's outweighed.
Sure.
Look, I can complain on the accessibility of Elden Ring. I can complain on the difficulty of Elden Ring. I can complain on the UI, which is dog shit.
I've only played an hour and the UI is so fucking bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's unreal how bad the UI is in this game.
It's real bad. And I think that goes to say something. This game is unlike anything I have ever played. Like I said, I think when I first was like, hey, I got like 5 hours into it, I'm just kind of cutting my teeth. The game is unlike anything I've ever played. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is still kind of a toss up, because it really depends, I think, on the player, on whether or not they're going to enjoy this game.
Yeah.
The game is incredibly hard. This is, some people have said they've gone on to say like, oh, this is baby's first Dark Souls. It is not baby's first Dark Souls. This game is fucking brutal and will kick your teeth in every chance it gets. For instance, I just tackled a boss and used all of my healing flasks through the first phase, and I didn't realize it was the first phase of the fight. And then got to the second phase and immediately died and was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
This sucks. But, the thing is, the game implores you to explore the world. It wants you to explore continuously.
Yeah.
If you feel like a boss is too hard or if an area is too hard, it's probably because it is.
Yeah.
By going back and exploring previous dungeons, collecting previous items that you might have missed because you're trying to mainline or do whatever, you'll find items, you'll find equipment, you'll find the ability, like smithing stones, which are used to upgrade your weapons, or You'll just collect enough runes to upgrade stats that are going to be pivotal for your character to be better. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played a game that has made me feel that level of character progression.
Mm,
We coming off the heels of something like Horizon, where it felt like at every like turn I was stronger than everything around me. In this
sure.
game, I feel weaker than every single thing. But then by going back and exploring, by getting better gear, by leveling up my weapons and whatnot, um, I feel stronger.
Yeah.
My skills are getting better, more in line to what the game is requiring of me. And honestly, it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And look, I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yes.
I wouldn't have put 30 hours into a game if I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if when I'm done with Elden Ring, if I'll be able to go back and play other Souls games
Sure.
because they're designed so differently in terms of
Yeah.
the way that the game is. But maybe there's a chance that Souls games are for me. I mean, that's a toss up, and I'm
That's a
not going to
toss
put
up.
I'm not going to
Sure.
put anything on it.
Yeah.
But no, I think ultimately the game is really fun,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of really cool things about the game that work.
Yeah.
And you know, in a world in which gas costs $4.50, wages haven't increased, shit's getting more expensive. I don't feel comfortable telling anyone to put their money towards this game. Money is finite, right?
Yeah.
And we all have to pay our own bills. And so I can't tell you if you're going to like it. This game is very different.
Yeah.
And I would stand by the initial reaction, which is if you enjoyed Souls games, you will enjoy this too. But I do think it's more approachable than previous Souls games. So if you are on the fence and you have the expendable money to be able to try it, then I'd say give it a shot. If you are on the fence and you don't know, and you're like, hey, if I've got $60 to spend, but I don't know what game to spend it on, honestly, I would say hold off.
Yeah.
Just because, look, like I said before, things are getting more expensive. Shit's not going great in the world right now. And
Yeah.
I want all of our audience to feel comfortable when making financial decisions, and this might not be the best one for you. So I would say temper expectations. You might love it, you might not, but if you're worried, I would say maybe hold off. But
Yeah.
if you're not, then I would say give it a go because it's a hell of a ton.
And hey, you might be winning a copy of it later today on this episode. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah, something about so I've only played an hour, so I'll keep this very brief because I haven't done a whole lot yet. But something that jumped out to me about this game
Mhm.
that is different than other Souls games I've played, which for context, I've played Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and a little bit of Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Demon Souls has a little bit of player choice in where to go, in that there are like 6 or 7 different like worlds you can choose to go to, but they very much are scaled in their difficulty based, like, even though you can technically go to any of those worlds, it is very clear which, like, you need to go to the one on the left and then the one next to it and the one next to it. Like, you don't start with the one on the far right because you're going to get your face kicked in. You technically can, but you shouldn't. With this game, something that I think will speak to people, and from what I've been listening and hearing around the internet, it is speaking to people, is that if you come to something that will kick your face in and you're not powerful enough, go find something that won't, or something
Yeah.
that won't kick it as hard. Like for me, my very first experience with this game, not even 20 minutes in, I go out to like the open world part, like the doors have finally opened and I'm through the very small tutorial that it has. I'm like, wow, there's a lot I can do. I kind of went left and I was like, that island over there looks kind of cool, but I don't think I can get there yet. So let me turn around and go back. So I go to the right. I jump down a couple like short cliffs. There's some bats that come at me. These, like, and when I say bats, you would think a bat the size of your hand. These bats are the size of like an SUV. They're huge, but take them out really easily. They're weak enemies. Great. Feeling good, feeling great. this is probably the way I'm supposed to be going because these enemies were really easy. I see in the distance this fire, like a little bonfire situation with like 8 or 9 people around it. I assume they're enemies. I assume they're bad people. So I'm like, I'm going to go kill those guys. About 30 feet in, this airplane-sized dragon comes out of nowhere, and like the boss health comes up. And I literally within like 90 seconds of being in the open world, I have encountered my first boss. And I'm like, nope, turn around, run the other way. I didn't take any damage. I didn't fight it. And I know I put a little marker on my map. Like when I actually have literally any equipment, I will come back and try fighting this boss. But right now is not that time. In Bloodborne, I would have had like, if that was the path that it gave me, that I would have had to fight that. I would have had to figure out how to kill this dragon as my first fight until I could get past it, because that's just the way historically the Souls games are a lot more linear like that. So I really like that this one is it being an open world. I can go my own path. But with that being said, I am so overwhelmed already. So I'm hoping after we record tonight and I go start playing a little bit more that it'll be a little more digestible to me, because right now I am so overwhelmed with what to do. I don't know where to go. I think that's kind of part of it. I think like kind of the whole point is for me to go explore, but I'm already pretty overwhelmed. But I'm just thrilled that you're enjoying it.
Yeah. And honestly, the world can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like if you do pick it up, just some pieces of advice from me.
We have a new segment we're starting right now. This is Cayman's Elden Ring advice.
Piece of advice. We joked a lot. Jason Schreier from Business Insider, he had mentioned that using a notebook is pivotal. It is.
Yeah.
100% is pivotal. I keep a notebook. Look, there's no quest guide here.
Yeah.
So going on and looking up and seeing what a boss offered, like what these NPCs quest lines are, that's going to be key. Second thing is just to explore.
Yeah.
Like the best thing you can do in the game is just explore. Go find map fragments, figure out what's happening around you at any point in time, get a lay of the world.
Is that why my map is just brown? Because I haven't got any map fragments?
Yep. 100%.
These bastards.
I know. The game hates you. Go find map fragments, and there's no markers outside of sites of grace, which are going to be like respawn points. Go collect as many as you can of those. And then just get a lay of the land. You're going to find spots early on that are good, like farming spots. Utilize those. No harm in that. And honestly, there's no harm in looking up guides. The game tells you absolutely nothing. It tells you nothing. It doesn't tell you where anything is. It doesn't tell you what to do.
It doesn't tell you what anything you have does.
Exactly. And so using a guide is not bad. Look, if you want to put in 400 hours into this game because you have no clue what's going on, you just want to hard mode it, feel free to do so. I'm not going to tell you not to, but also for those people, and you're going to have some Souls people who are going to tell you don't do that because that's not how the game works. Don't listen to those people.
Yeah.
Do your own thing, man. You'll be fine. Just explore the world. You're going to find a ton of really good loot. And also another thing, level up your early in-game weapons. If you find a weapon that works for you, don't hold on to smithing stones. Level them up. You're going to find a ton of them as you progress through the world. So don't hesitate to do that. That's going to be pivotal on being able to take out some of the early in-game bosses. For me, I've cleared out the first 2 worlds the first 2 areas of the open world that you can explore openly. I've completed all of those, and I'm not now on to like the second big boss or story boss that you can get to. And honestly, it really boils down to just exploring, get comfortable, and get good.
And just stab those enemies.
Do it. Just stab them.
Pull out your blue knife that was a Christmas gift from your brother and just kill him. For our audio listeners, I pulled out a knife that was in my pocket and I'm holding it. And it's a blue knife that my brother gave me for Christmas. Okay, so let's go to our next topic, which is a little review roundup for Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy, which is a game that was announced several months ago that every iteration of it that I've seen, every trailer, every gameplay reveal, I'm like, wow, this game looks like absolute dog shit.
Yes.
Surprise, reviews are actually pretty good for them. For
Yeah.
it. Right now it has a 72% on Metacritic, which would only get you like 2 points in our fantasy league, but still, we have a review here from GameSpot and we have a review here from IGN. I'll start us off with the GameSpot review. This is from Phil Hornshaw, a 7 out of 10. Phil says, this is kind of from his final paragraph. Still, while it might be confusing and memey, disjointed and weird, Strangers of Paradise is also a lot of fun. It's full of cool combat with a wide variety of options and a job system that lets you customize your playstyle or just try out what feels like 30 different ones. Its challenge makes every fight a battle of skill, while also giving you the tools to feel like a ludicrously powerful Final Fantasy badass. And despite being bizarrely delivered and wildly strange, there's a delight in uncovering what the hell is actually going on in the game's story and the weird ideas it brings to bear on the Final Fantasy series. Stranger of Paradise is mostly a more focused version of Final Fantasy that shows some different directions for the series from its traditional games, even if those directions take it down paths that are sometimes a bit stranger. Which
Indeed.
doesn't like honestly, that little verdict from GameSpot doesn't necessarily make me want to try the game, but it's still surprising that it's getting a good remark.
Well, maybe Jade Griffin over at IGN, who gave it an 8 out of 10, maybe she'll change your mind. What she says is, it began as a collection of the loosest of story ideas that seemed to go nowhere, but slowly but surely, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin pulled it all together and managed to stick the landing. Though you'll want to be sure to scour it for collectibles if you want the full effect of its revelations, a solid and engaging action combat system can be tuned to be as challenging as it is rewarding. Coupled with the versatile character customization that lets you mix and match from dozen of interchangeable jobs, your character fights how you see fit and gives the ability to experiment and find a winning combination in a single player or 3-player co-op. There's significant room for improvement in the tools it gives you to manage the avalanche of gear that drops in every mission, but the nods to Final Fantasy history littered throughout its levels are enough to divert attention from the sort of thing. Add in all the extra challenges awaiting for finishing the story, and you'll find plenty of content to sink your teeth into that is made even better when you join up with others.
Interestingly, that review sounds less than an 8 to me. Like that it's a little like that verdict is not as positive as I would think an 8 out of 10 verdict would be. Interestingly.
Sure.
Um,
I mean, it all seems interesting, right?
yeah, right.
It look, the way it's presented, the game looks how do I say, bad?
Yeah.
But no,
But it
I
almost looks like good bad, like or
yeah,
bad good rather. Like the in the trailers, the voice acting is so bad. And like sometimes like maybe it has like a samurai cop charm to it where like
hey,
it's
maybe.
bad but it's fun because it's bad. I don't know. Just a quick thing before you go on with your whatever you were about to say, which sounded really dismissive. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC is where you can play this game. I should have started with that, but what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I don't know. I everyone that I've seen who's talked about it, ultimately what they say is the game is fun to play.
Yeah, which isn't that the point of a video game?
Yeah, and I think like that's what we're looking for, right? You're looking for a
Yeah,
game that's fun to play. The story could be fantastic, but if the gameplay is not enjoyable from moment to moment, then I think it reduces the overall value of a
yeah,
game. And I think in this particular situation, like it might just boil down to that the game is fun to play. And
Sure.
a lot of what I've read and seen on videos is that the story itself to beat the game is about 30 hours, which is significantly less than I would have imagined a Final Fantasy game being,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good sign for me, someone who, doesn't need to put in 100+ hours into a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Um, but like, hey, look, if the game's fun, the game's fun.
Yeah.
And the story comes together at the end, which I think is a big thing too. Do I think from listening to some of these reviews that it deserves an 8 out of 10? I don't know.
Yeah.
But a 72 sounds about right. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest. One of my favorite games pretty much of all time, Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yeah.
It ended up with like a 7.5 across the board. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think there is a player who's going to enjoy it. And I don't think, once again, that you should shy away from a game based on what someone says. But I also don't think that you should jump into a game by what someone says.
Sure.
Um, I will say, so I've been playing Elden Ring, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, and I jumped back into play with one of my friends the other night to Destiny 2.
The Witch Queen.
And yes, which is just released. And I jumped into play and I didn't get the expansion pack because I was like, I'm not gonna drop $40 on an expansion pack. Like
What? It's $40 for that new
it's
thing?
40, yeah, it's $40.
God
So
damn.
I'm like, I'll get in and I'll play whatever content is available to play with my friend. And if I feel the urge and I feel like we're getting in far enough and we want that extra content, we'll do it. And coming off of Elden Ring, a game that tells you nothing. I go into Destiny 2, a game that tells you everything.
Sure.
And I'm like, man, this is such a weird world that we live in.
Yeah.
And coming off the heels of Elden Ring, I just like I don't know what games are gonna look like going forward because people are gonna try to encapsulate everything that Elden Ring is. So God knows what the next open world game looks like. But
Sure.
like I said, and to kind of get back to the point at hand is that I always say find a reviewer that speaks to you and listen to what they say. Because a game that could have a 7, Metacritic wise, could be your game of the year, like
Sure.
Yakuza Like a Dragon was for me. Or a game like Elden Ring, which is categorically a masterpiece according to review critics, could be a game that you absolutely hate. So it really does boil down to finding a reviewer who speaks to you that enjoys the same things you do. And I think Stranger of Paradise and Elden Ring are two incredible um, points to look at, where one has a 72 on Metacritic, one has like what a 96 right now, 90.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could enjoy one way more than the other, and that goes for both games. So if you're looking to pick up a new game and you're trying to decide between the two, find the reviewer that you enjoy the most or you think lines up with what your opinion of video games or what you enjoy is,
Sure.
and then listen to them because you might find that you would be surprised. You're going to find games like Stranger Paradise, Elden Ring, Bulletstorm.
Mm.
It could be the game for you.
And let's just hope that that reviewer that you love owns a beautiful little blue knife that can have a blade on both sides like Darth Maul.
Hell yeah. Every
you.
knife should have 2 blades.
For you audio listeners, I'm doing a little knife show. Duel of the Fates. Okay. So yeah, I don't think that I'm gonna play Strangers of Paradise, at least not anytime soon, but I'm surprised that it's getting the better scores. So interesting things there, Cayman. Interesting. Well, I want to take my Stranger of Paradise to a list from another, news source that we were just talking about, IGN. They posted a list last week or a week or so ago claiming what they think are the top 10 open world games ever made of all time. I want to talk about it. I want to go through their list. I want to see, what terrible mistakes they've made, what things are missing, what are, what's way too high, what's way too low. I want to do all of it, Cayman, with you. So let's start at number 10, work our way up, and then go from there. How does that sound?
Let's do it.
Number 10, Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Number 9, Horizon Forbidden West. Number 8, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Number 7, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Number 6, Fallout New Vegas. Number 5, Elden Ring, a game that's not even been out for 3 weeks. They say is the 5th best open world game ever made. Red Dead Redemption 2 at number 4. Grand Theft Auto 5 at number 3. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at number 2. And the best open world game ever made, you probably guessed it, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Cayman, what are your initial thoughts on this top 10 list?
If we go by preference or opinion,
which
Breath of the Wild is way too high on this list.
Sure.
Metal Gear Solid 5 should not be on the list.
Okay.
Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, that's a tough one. I think that's probably the hardest debatable game. Reason being is because you have it's essentially the same open world that you found in the original Marvel Spider-Man. But I do think, at least on that one, that Miles Morales did add some more context to the world. It gave some more explorable areas that were more fleshed out.
Yeah.
It was built more for the PS5 than PS4. And so I don't disagree that I think that might take the cake over Marvel's Spider-Man.
Sure.
The other games on the list, I understand. I understand why The Witcher 3 is on the list. Do I think as number 2, I would move it down a little bit.
Sure.
Grand Theft Auto 5, obviously, I think should be on the list.
Sure.
It's a game that I enjoyed, maybe not as much as a lot of other people. And maybe specifying it as Grand Theft Auto 5 and not Grand Theft Auto Online might be a little bit of an issue there. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 being on those lists is a solid choice.
Sure.
Fallout New Vegas I personally think is the best of the Fallout series. Elder Scrolls Skyrim, I think, is also a wonderful choice. Skyrim is one of the best open world games I've ever played. Horizon Forbidden West, I think, nails the checkbox open world in a way that we've never seen before.
Sure.
I think it should be higher up on the list, but that's, like I said, preference. Elden Ring being number 5 is interesting.
Yeah. That's the biggest shocker for me. Like, even though, because like I can quantify Forbidden West as being on this list, because 3 weeks ago I would have put Horizon Zero Dawn on this list. However, I think most people can agree Forbidden West is better than Zero Dawn. So like if Zero Dawn was going to be on the list, Forbidden West is a better game. Sure, Forbidden West should be on the list. Elden Ring, though, it's super interesting to me because it's so new. And not to say that, I mean, I obviously all of this is subjective. It's just surprising to me that a new, I mean, I guess maybe it's not as new as, because it's not a totally new type of game. It's just, it's another iteration of the Souls franchise. So maybe that's part of it. But I'm surprised that it's on this list as high as it is, simply with how new it is. Because when this list was posted, I mean, this would have been a week ago. So the game would have only been out for like 2 weeks at that point.
Yeah. I think kind of coming off of Elden Ring with this inclusion, it reminds me of the issue we run into when reviewing a film, per se. Right?
Okay.
Where a lot of times you leave the theater and you're so hyped off of the film that you just watched that you're like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and you are so involved in it that it's hard to put into, like, it's hard to process the flaws that come alongside it. And I think everything, like, especially watching a film, which is only, up to, if you're like the latest Batman, 3 hours, um, you know, a night to sleep on, and you can address the issues
Sure.
that you've addressed, that you can come across with video games, with them being, who knows how long they can be, especially an open world game can
Yeah.
be upwards of 100+ hours. I think that you need more time to be able to justify its inclusion. And I know I hear someone out there being like, well, you said Horizon Forbidden West deserves to be on this list. Yes. And the reason I say that is because we've had the first Horizon. We know what it is. And in terms of open world, Forbidden West takes that game and makes it just way better, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as big of a deal to jump so far into saying that it deserves its place on a top 10 list like this. Whereas Elden Ring is so drastically different than anything we've ever played. The question
Maybe that's
boils
why.
down to, and maybe so, and then that's the question boils down to is like, are we judging it based on the fact that like the game is just so much different?
Sure.
Do I think the open world's great? I think the open world's really cool. I don't know what the fuck is happening in that open world
Yeah.
because the game doesn't tell me shit about anything.
Right.
And that's where my issue lies. And some
Sure.
people might really enjoy the ambiguous nature of a game like this. Um, do I think that over time that its inclusion will be there? 100%.
Yeah.
I think it will revolutionize the way that the other developers will approach open world games.
Yeah.
Do I think its inclusion at number 5? Eh,
Yeah. I
might be a
think
bit high.
too, like there's also something to be said about like with these lists, like I think you also have to take a step back and ask like, what's the purpose of it? Is it just like, is the idea that, okay, I want to walk into GameStop and buy an open world game. So I'm going to look at the top 10 open world games according to IGN and I'll pick whatever number one is. Like, is that the purpose of the list to like help you buy something? Is it just simply making a list based on like preference of these editors? Is it just like kind of what's the goal here other than to rank something? If there is one, if there's not one, that's fine. If all it is just to say like these are the top 10, sure. But I think that context might also help guide this, because the reason I say that, if the mission statement of this list is to say these are, if you're going to start from the top and just play the best open world games ever, I would say start with Zelda, then Witcher, then Grand Theft Auto, then Red Dead, then Elden Ring. Then I would say I don't agree with this list like top to bottom. But if it's just kind of putting together 10 really awesome open world games, sure, then it makes sense. And then where they are on the list doesn't maybe matter as much, perhaps.
The other question, sorry, the other question I have is, to kind of piggyback off of what you said, is, are we looking at the nature of the game? Are we looking at these are the best games in terms of like a Metacritic scale? Are we looking at these are the best game, like these are just the best open world games?
Sure.
Are these the best? And so then once you get into like, are we judging this just based on the open world itself?
Right. Which I think potentially might be, you know what? I wonder, I'm going to look at the posting and see if they give that context at the top.
I mean,
because I just looked at the numbers on their Instagram. I didn't actually read. This is what they say. Open world games have come a long way over the years, offering more freedom to explore and in how we approach objectives. But which ones have it all? The best open world, the best challenges, the best story, the best characters. IGN staff duked it out in a professional manner, of course, to put together a list of the best open world games, looking at how they deliver as a complete package and letting us best get lost in a world, take over enemy outposts, and find a ridiculous way to outrun enemies. So without further ado, here's IGN's picks for the top 10 open world games. They kind of actually don't answer the purpose other than to say this is right. They put together a list of the best open world games. That's what they're saying. Ultimately, though, is this in their minds, these are the best open world games, which is interesting because something like not all of these games on this list have a rating of a 10. Not that they have to, but like there are some on this list, like Phantom Pain, I believe got a 10 from IGN. I don't think New Vegas did. I think New Vegas got like an 8 or something. So it's interesting that they put, granted, I'm sure whoever reviewed New Vegas wasn't helping make this list, but it's interesting. Like there's kind of that nuance that comes when you're such a big publication that you have a track record of what you've said. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. So of this, so we've kind of talked a little bit about the list in general. What are some games that you think should have been on this list, Cayman?
Yeah, so I think that I think not including a Ubisoft game is shocking since they are the ones that
that's a really
have really defined what modern open world games are. If I had to choose a new Ubisoft game, personally for me, I would choose Assassin's Creed Origins as a game that I would include on this list. Maybe instead of having something like Metal Gear Solid 5, which I don't think is an open world game. I think the issue with Assassin's Creed in the last few iterations or last couple iterations, they think that bigger is better, and it's not. Origins did something. They hit that sweet spot, right? Where the map was big and there was a lot of different ways that you could explore the map. But ultimately it was there was a lot of things happening in the world, a lot of areas that you can explore. You just stumble across new, interesting places just while exploring.
Sure.
And the world was just big enough where you felt like, wow, I could go from point A to point B and see drastically different things. I could be in like a portion of what felt like Greece, and I'm in Egypt, and I'm literally in the desert trying to get a fucking trophy. Did I see Locust? And like, there was a lot there, but it wasn't like the recent ones. The recent ones for me have just been way too big.
Way too big.
It's arduous trying to traverse some of these landscapes because they're so massive. And a lot of that space that you're traversing is just dead waste. There's nothing there. There's nothing to explore. There's nothing to see. And it's just too much. Assassin's Creed Origins hit that spot for me. And I think that if you were to look at an Ubisoft game, I think it's got one of the best open worlds they've ever made.
Yeah, I didn't even realize at first that there wasn't a single Ubisoft game. That's interesting. Perhaps that's because they make so many of them that they don't often get to really nail what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I think Assassin's Creed 2, I think, is one that people go back to a lot as being a really, really good open world game. I don't know that I would have put it on my list per se. But I would say like some of the ones that jump out to me as being missing, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, 100%.
That one, I'm so shocked that that's not on this list with how well received that was, how loved it was, how fresh it felt as an open world game compared to so many of the ones on this list. Like Fallout New Vegas and Skyrim, essentially the same game, just with a different setting. That's because it's made by the same people, but there is something to be said about it feeling like essentially like the same game. And Red Dead Redemption 2, Grand Theft Auto, same thing. They have a lot of similarities because it's the same people that make them. They're just in different settings. So it's interesting that kind of those two, or those four rather, all make it on when something like Ghost of Tsushima, which is, I would say, like the freshest open world game I've played in the last like 10 years. I'm surprised that that's not on this list. I'm also surprised that Dragon Age Inquisition is not on this list. I know that that's kind of, that might fall in the same category as the Phantom Pain, even though their maps are very different, in that it doesn't feel as open worldy as a typical open world game. But I would say it's an open world game. Like even though they're very much, or Dragon Age is very much an RPG. I mean, a lot of these are RPGs, but I'm surprised that didn't make the list,
Mhm.
especially with how well regarded that is, especially in the history of IGN. Like that was a game of the year one year for them. So that one surprised me. And then for me, this one didn't surprise me, but I very much I agree with you that Breath of the Wild is an overhyped video game. I like it a lot more than you do. It is one of the most fun games I have played in my life, but it's not my favorite Zelda game. And my favorite Zelda game is an open world Zelda game, which is Wind Waker. And so I
Mhm.
would have had Wind Waker on this list before I would have had Breath of the Wild on this list
Sure.
personally. I think even though Breath of the Wild changed what a Zelda game can be and is, there's a lot about that game that is inherently anti-Zelda, meaning there aren't really dungeons, which dungeons is usually like a staple of a Zelda game. A lot of people liked that change. I didn't. I wanted there to be at least a few what felt like OG Zelda dungeons.
Mhm.
Instead, they had the 120 shrines, but really, when you like kind of sat down as someone who essentially 100% of that game outside of the Korok seeds, a lot of the shrines are the exact same.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just fight this thing or the puzzle, which actually my favorite of the shrines was when the puzzle was actually in the world, and once you got into the shrine, you just got the reward because the puzzle itself was just finding the shrine. Those were really cool to me, but there were a lot that just felt because I replayed this game just a few months ago and I had a lot of fun with it, but I very quickly realized I was like, I am in no way, shape, or form going to do all 120 of these again because they're just not fun. Like doing them again, a lot of them just
sure.
feel really repetitive. But like then I go back and I play Majora's Mask, and all of the dungeons are just, even though I've played them all 3 times, 4 times in my life, I want to do it again because they're designed that well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
and
mean,
go ahead.
you say that, and one of some of the games that well, at least one of the games that threw me, no inclusion of Cyberpunk 2077, which
Sure.
I understand, 100% understand that it did not release in a state that was worthy for any consumer to play out, probably outside of PC, but it wasn't there. But the open world in that game was incredible. There was so much to do,
Sure.
so many ways to get about going from point A to point B, and exploring that world was so much fun. And not having on this list seems
Well,
like
I
like they didn't include it to not start a fire amongst
sure.
people who are pissed off about it.
I would also be willing to bet because the truly fixed version of that game only came out what a month ago now. I mean,
Fair.
it was working well before that, but like the actual like the 1.5 patch, whatever they called it, it's not been out very long. I wouldn't be surprised if they make another iteration of this list in a few years, if it does make it then.
Sure.
But I think that's probably part of it is that there are a lot of people, myself included, who still haven't played it because the patch came out right when Horizon Forbidden West came out and Sifu had just come out and Elden Ring was about to come out. And so it's like, it's hard for me to find the time to
Yeah.
do that.
But jumping in and saying like, "Oh, well, Elden Ring is more worthy of a spot on this list than something like Cyberpunk 2077." Not saying that Elden Ring isn't more
Sure.
worthy. What I'm saying is that Cyberpunk 2077, that's look, missing that seems odd to me. I mean, I like we can go over it. I think a couple more, maybe not top tens, but other just really good open world games. Bully
Yeah.
had a really fun open world game that was more condensed, way more condensed than something like Grand Theft Auto was, and it's all done by Rockstar. But Bully had like a really interesting open world. Like you could explore a whole town outside of just the campus, and it was really well built and lived in and felt really cool at the time. And I think another one is Avalanche's Mad Max game was like
Mm,
just a really interesting take on what an open world game could be. There was a lot of dead space in Mad
there
Max, but
was.
But that's kind of the part of Mad Max is you're
Sure.
not expecting to find something around every single corner. And do I think that IGN is wrong with their top 10? No, but no under the context of this is once again an opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Absolutely.
whether I agree with all the choices they made, no. Do I think that there's games that they missed on there? Absolutely. And that's okay. I think that this is a very solid top 10 list,
Yeah.
and all of these games are worth playing, minus Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain.
That's what I
Um,
haven't said it yet, but I actually strongly disagree with you on that one. I think, and I know if Greg Fairchild is listening, he's on my side here. I think Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, even though its story is trash, kind of, it's open world. That might actually be to this day the most hours I've ever put into a video game. Potentially, I would have to go and look at like my old hours played on PS4, but I played that game so goddamn much, and it's because the gameplay loop was so satisfying that even though parts of it didn't feel as open worldy, like it's kind of like uh, almost like a God of War in a way, or like these games where they're not necessarily like 100% open world, but there are parts of them that are open world. You have your base that is like a big map, and then you can go to various. There's like a place in Africa. It's been a while, so I don't remember all the settings, but there are a few different maps that you can go to, and each of those are these giant kind of open world segments.
sure.
So it's not open world like Grand Theft Auto where everything is one giant map, but there are like multiple maps within it that make it an open world in a way.
Mhm.
So I understand like if you would argue that Phantom Pain's just not open world because of that. I wouldn't necessarily say you're wrong. I would disagree with you, but I wouldn't say you're wrong. But I think this game absolutely deserves to be on the list. It's so
I
so
mean,
good.
if I look at all of the games listed here, Phantom Pain is the least open world
I would
of
agree with
those
that.
games.
Of
And
these games
so
for sure.
and that's really the only reason that I
Yeah.
would talk poorly upon that. I played it Phantom Pain. I wasn't as big
You
on
also
the
famously don't
gameplay.
like stealth games as much.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is all opinion.
Yeah, no, for
Uh
sure. Totally.
how do you feel about let's jumping into a little spoiler cast?
Oh, to talk about number 9, Horizon Forbidden West.
Let's do it.
I would love that. I do want to say one final piece
Sure,
about
sure.
Spider-Man. I think Marvel Spider-Man should be on this list instead of Miles Morales,
Okay.
personally. And that's
That's
it.
fair.
That's all. That's all. Okay. Horizon Forbidden West came in. I finally, just a few short days ago, I hit credits. I popped that plat. I did it in the best way where once I beat the game and finished the story, the plat hit. I didn't have to circle back and do anything else, which is always my favorite way to get a platinum trophy.
Hell yeah.
But now, so before we start talking actual spoilers, I want to say to our audio listeners, if you have not played this game yet and you don't want to be spoiled, look in the show notes on your podcast app, and I will have time codes. So you can, if you're interested in the Elden Ring giveaway, you can fast forward to that so that you're not spoiled. Or if you have played the game and you want to be spoiled, or you just don't think you're ever going to play it and you just want to hear what we thought about its story and a spoiler discussion, stick around. But after this, we will announce the Elden Ring giveaway, and then we will be on our merry ways. So I will put those time codes in the description. So with that being said, full spoilers moving forward. This is your last chance. Final warning. If you don't want the game spoiled, go away. If you want the game spoiled, you're in good company. Okay. I cannot fucking believe they killed Varl, Cayman.
God damn it.
What a cheat.
a-
I honestly, I didn't like that. And not because it hurt
Mm,
me, but because I think they handled it really poorly. And
yeah.
it felt really cheap. It felt like they just wanted to kill somebody. It was disappointing that it happened to be like one of the only main characters that were black. It felt a little tokeny that they would kill the black guy.
Mhm.
Varl was such a cool character, and I was legitimately pissed off that they decided to kill him because it didn't feel earned to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I will say that if they killed Aaron, like that would have like fucking ruined
Honestly,
my life. I
I would have been
love
fine with it.
Aaron. See, I loved Aaron so much, and
I like him.
I feel like Varl's setup as the story goes was he like with time spent after, he feels like the most expendable character, um, which is bad to say, but
Well, and that's probably because they knew they were going to kill him, so they probably didn't want to make the audience fall in love with him. But then I would argue, if you're going to kill him, make me fall in love with him so that it has a more emotional impact.
Yeah. So maybe Aaron would be the setup, and then also dropping the bomb like immediately after. It's like, oh hey, Zoe, his love interest in the game. I'm pregnant.
Of course she is. Also felt so tropey and so cheap.
It felt, oh my god, so tropey. But ultimately, the biggest issue I have with the story, especially the end of the game, is just ultimately the ending.
Yeah.
I liked the fact that Silence, the who's portrayed as almost like the villain the whole time. That he opts after the big boss is killed, and they introduce the next big bad for the next game. He decides to stay on.
We got to talk
and
about.
I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm glad that he didn't leave World, that he is staying back to help the group, and he's going to be back in the fold, because I think he's a really fun character. Like, he's a very interesting character that has like a lot of very interesting motivations behind him, and is one of the most well thought out characters. But that fucking ending, man, honestly, you know what it felt like? It felt like The Last Jedi.
Are you a Last Jedi hater?
Okay. I'm a hater in the sense that I felt like the movie was connective tissue to set up the final film.
Sure.
Okay. And I feel like this ending it almost turned this game into just being connective tissue to set up the next installment. And it really, like, it took my enjoyment from being like a 9.5 to like a solid 8.
Honestly, I completely agree. When you said that you felt a little disappointed with the ending, because you and I, a lot of the time, we can disagree on stories, and like we have different tastes with certain things. Not everything. We do share a lot of the same tastes, but so I was like, you know what? He didn't like it. I feel like I'm gonna like it because I really like where this is going, and I thought it was. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but it honestly felt disrespectful to me as a player because the whole first game, the twist is that the reason that this happened is because Ted Faro, who I want to talk a little bit more about later, ultimately fucked humanity and chose his own like potential for power and greed, and it ended up literally ending the world. And so it kind of sets up this next game as,
Jeff
well,
Bezos.
we're going to kind of, essentially he is Jeff Bezos. It was like, we're going to kind of find out more about that. We're going to learn more about the Pharaoh plague and all of these things, while also these other things that are happening in the world that are, comparatively small potatoes compared to this kind of larger scheme. And then essentially what happens is they say, oh, by the way, all of that ultimately doesn't matter because now there's this other threat that is just going to come destroy the world. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That everything that you just said was the most important thing in this world is now literally doesn't matter because regardless of outcome, this random thing called Nemesis, which is a stupid name because of Resident Evil, like we already have Nemesis. This thing called Nemesis is just going to come destroy the world, and now we have to figure out a way to stop that. So, like, it just felt so silly that ultimately all of the decisions we made didn't really matter because now and like I understand that like there needs to be a new conflict, but like tell me this next game. I don't need to know about Nemesis until next game. Open with this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to know about this brain mind thing of all of the Zeniths combined as this like giant blob because they haven't designed what it looks like yet. I'm sure it's going to have a physical look. It just like, it just felt so shoehorned to me. And it was just like, are you serious? Because like, I really liked ultimately, like really up until that point when they reveal Nemesis, I really liked where it was going. That Tilda, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, which was awesome and so underutilized.
100%.
Same with Silence. I thought they were both
Yep.
underutilized out the ass. I was like, I want more of this character. It was like once you start kind of befriending her and she's telling you more about the Zeniths and who they are and that they were actually the humans that left 1,000 years ago. They've just figured out how to be immortal. I was like, that's fucking cool. This is sci-fi as
Yeah.
hell. This is like metal sci-fi. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she, like, and she kind of has this, like, she's telling you that she's still bad, even though she's trying to convince you she's good, but you want to believe her that she's good. And then come to find out the reason she's bad is because she just is using you to get Gaia off world to start Earth elsewhere so that she can still survive. And I was like, this just feels so cheap to me.
You know, honestly,
I'm fired up.
I think it would work better if they were to set it up like a teaser, post-credit teaser, like a
100%.
stinger.
Yes.
Because when you drop this huge revelation, of course they're gonna expunge upon it. They're gonna talk so much about it, which they do. And you're just like, all right, cool. I guess I'll wait 7 years for the next Horizon game to come out.
Right.
And when I get there, I'm going to have to watch another fucking hour-long video to recap all of the games leading into this. And it just didn't feel right.
Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, and it also kind of like, I don't know, it's spoiled story-wise. It spoiled my experience with Horizon.
I agree.
Not to say that the game is not fun. The game
right.
is
and that's
incredibly fun.
We're both fired up, but like I still loved the game. And there are things I want to talk about that I really, really loved that stick with me more than anything from the previous game. It was just disappointing but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
No. You nailed the nail on the head, so to speak. You know, you take a game that the story was engaging and fun and give me the emphasis to complete it.
Yeah.
And then you throw in this twist at the end that felt undeserved.
Yeah.
That felt flat. And felt like it was literally only added to lengthen this franchise, which I think you could have done with just a quick stinger at the end, post-credit stinger. Get me excited.
Like the stinger they did for the first game.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. It's not that I'm not excited about whatever Horizon does next. I'm more than excited. I think it's an incredibly fun world, and I'm very excited about all of the interesting things that can happen in it. But this just fell flat.
Yeah, I agree. There are two other things that I want to bitch about, and then I want to talk about the things that I really loved.
Okay.
The other thing I want to bitch about, which is a small thing, is I am shocked that they didn't use the Golden Gate Bridge literally at all in this game. Yeah, it's just like
you see it in the distance.
You see it, and like you can go to it, and like as I'm exploring around San Francisco, and like not even the Golden Gate Bridge, but like San Francisco as a whole, I feel like I was misled by the use of San Francisco. I was thinking that San Francisco was the Forbidden West, but really you don't go to, unless you like Golden Path the game and just do all of the main story quests, you're not going to see San Francisco for like 45 hours in this game. And then when you're there, you're only there for like 3 hours tops. And so I'm exploring around San Francisco, which is my favorite of the locations within the game. Like I thought they built a really cool place where like all of a sudden it's like very jungly compared to the desert of Las Vegas and like the mountains of whatever would be north of that. I'm not sure exactly, like Salt Lake City, maybe like Utah. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm like barely there. So I'm flying around, or I'm running around seeing what I can do. And then eventually flying, which I was awesome. I loved the flying mechanic in this game. It really worked for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to wait to go to the Golden Gate Bridge because I guarantee you the final mission is taking me to Golden Gate. Like that, it makes sense that something as huge as it is in the map, that it's like the final battle is going to probably be on Golden Gate Bridge. And then credits roll. And I'm like, oh, wait, I never saw Golden Gate Bridge because I assumed I would be going there with the story and I never did. So that was a little disappointing. Like because something that I want to rave about is Las Vegas in a minute.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Before we get there though. So there was that, like, that was disappointing that they didn't utilize it. And maybe, Forbidden West follows the trajectory of Zero Dawn. maybe they'll release some more story content that is more San Francisco focused, perhaps. I don't know. But I hope so, because it was really cool, especially the verticality of San Francisco, having all the skyscrapers. I loved
100%.
the area. It just was disappointing that there wasn't as much to do there. But the other thing that pissed me off almost as much as the end, if not more, arguably more, one of my favorite missions in the game is when you go into Pharaoh's tomb, which, fun play on words there. He had an obsession with Egyptian culture and the pyramids. His name is Ted Pharaoh, spelled F-A-R-O. He acted like he was a pharaoh, like some fun like play on words there, imagery. One of the coolest missions in the game. This character CEO, which is, if you played in subtitles, you would catch on that his name is CEO, but they just didn't know that CEO was pronounced CEO, so they called him CEO, which I thought was clever. Yeah. And he makes you dress up as Elizabeth Sobek, which I thought was really cool. And there's this weird, like really uncomfortable power dynamic where he's kind of like forcing you to like role play. And I'm like, I fucking hate this guy and I can't wait to kill him. This whole mission's really cool. You're finding out so much about the world from Pharaoh's perspective, and how even in his final days, he was even worse than he had been. He had like injected these things into people's heads so that he could eventually just essentially just kill people with a flip of a switch if they betrayed him, which is like really building up this character as being a fucking evil Jeff Bezos. And then you go to his little tomb where he is, and you find out Pharaoh is still alive. Yep. He has figured out how to be immortal. And then CEO opens the door, goes in. He has this reaction. And so you think he must be this like monster amalgamation thing, maybe like the Rat King from The Last of Us, something. And then they don't fucking show me, and I don't get to fight Ted Pharaoh.
Not at all.
There's this like throwaway line off screen where CEO like has one of his little cronies go in and kill him. And then because they kill him, everything starts collapsing, the whole place. And then it's like an escape mission where you have to run out and not die because the place is self-destructing. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I was so goddamn mad that they took that from us.
It almost feels like it would have been a boss fight at some point during development.
Had to have been. And they were
like, you know, this doesn't work. Or if we include this, we might get bumped from a T rating to an M rating or something.
Maybe
they got them to this point that they just didn't include it. But I agree.
I was
1,000,000,000%.
I was like, so pissed, dude.
At least show me what it looks like.
Right.
Like, I feel like if you like someone out there is going to dig through the file, like dig through the code of the game, and they're going to actually pull out like what it looks like what Ted Pharaoh looks like now. And it's going to be grotesque as hell and awesome.
Yeah.
And the fact you wouldn't let me kill it pisses me off.
Man. And maybe it's just because I've been avoiding spoilers, but no one is talking about this. And I am so mad about it. And I cannot believe, and I totally agree with you. I think it must have been part of the story. It must have been that we were going to fight him or something, and they just scrapped it and they reworked it. I even wonder if it was like, maybe this was a bigger part of the story years ago where like this was the climax and maybe this was the final boss fight. I don't know, but it just felt so weird. Like as I'm running away and like lava's coming in and I'm like trying to not die, I'm like laughing so angrily because I'm like, I cannot believe they just did this to me. I felt personally attacked.
I agree. Let's talk about Vegas though.
Oh my fucking God. Okay. So that's all the negative shit. There's so much about this that I really loved though. The mission in Vegas, first of all, starting out with those 3 guys that had this like expedition that went wrong.
I love them so much.
That whole scene was incredible. Like the way it was shot, the way it was acted, the way it was animated, really felt like I was watching a movie in a really good way. And I was like blown away to the point where I did a screen recording of my PlayStation because I was like, I at some point want to go watch that again because it was so compelling. And that's just the beginning. Like going down with that being the first mission where you can start breathing underwater was really cool. Regrettably, I waited a long time to do that mission, which was frustrating that I kept unlocking these places that I just couldn't swim to. But what a fucking cool, like unbelievably cool mission with awesome reveals. Like to find out that you are like they had kind of said that you were on the ruins of Las Vegas, but they didn't really like it seemed like the magic obviously was gone because there's no electricity and these kinds of
Yeah.
things. And then to have that reveal at the end when you've drained all the water, you fought the tidal, whatever the fuck it's called, the giant whale thing, the like whatever. And then you are able to turn the lights on, and there's all these I forget what they call them. Do you remember what they're called? All the like
Ornament.
projection ornaments. Yeah, the ornaments that make the projections that make, Las Vegas in the year 2065 or whatever it is, what it looks like. It was so cool.
Insane.
Yeah.
So we had like two different scenarios that happened. I played, and when I exited that mission, it was nighttime for me.
Oh, interesting.
So I see this beautiful, all of the buildings are their original structure, just done
Yeah.
in light
Yeah.
and just absolutely fucking gorgeous. And then when Sid played it, she came out during daytime, and that
Oh
impact
man.
was so much less.
It was nighttime for me too.
Okay, yeah, hers, she watched that, it was daytime, and it was like
Damn.
just not as beautiful. And I was
That
like,
should have been
I
a
was
scripted moment where it always
yeah,
is nighttime when you
I
come
was
out.
like, I feel so bad that you did not get to see this at nighttime because
Yeah.
goddamn, when you walk out and it's like pitch black sky and stars and
And they're
you
just like
see
all
these
these
beautiful
skyscrapers and
lights. Oh my god,
so cool.
it's such a fucking beautiful. And so my question to you now.
Okay.
So Ava, one of the characters that you meet in the game, she ends up becoming part of your team, and
Oh, yes,
you
yes, 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 yes.
learn
Okay.
that she comes to the Forbidden West, and they had done it by boat,
Yeah.
and they'd come from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like they came from England.
It does sound like they come from England.
Okay.
They say they came from across the ocean. And granted, it's been 1,000 years. The world has been reborn. So maybe like the way that race is split up around the world now, maybe it's completely different. So maybe they came from, well, no, actually, no, I don't think they would have come from Asia because no, actually, maybe they did come from Asia because they're on the west side of the continent.
See, that's what I assumed, right? I was like, but there's like a line in it that really made me think like, oh no, these people came from England, like
Huh. Yeah. Because I also thought they came from England until right now.
from Western Europe.
Yeah.
And so my question is like, obviously the whole world, because this game all takes place in the United States,
Right. Right.
right? Or what's left of it. Do we think that they're going to now take place, like it's going to be overseas? We're going to other countries.
I think there are two paths forward from here.
Okay.
Because the first game was Denver, Montana, Utah, that area, the mountains of the West.
Sure.
But to them, it's the East because east of them is the Rocky Mountains, essentially. So they couldn't go over them. And then this game, it's Las Vegas, it's San Francisco, and yeah, I guess maybe also Utah. Not sure. I think either the next game goes to New York City.
Ooh.
Or we're going like England, somewhere in Europe.
Okay.
I don't think we would go multiple places because I don't think that they'll be able to justify making like traveling, because for them they kind of talk about how it almost felt like coming to America for the first time. Like they lost a bunch of their people, they lost a bunch of ships, a bunch of people died from like disease and that kind of thing, hurricanes, they lost multiple ships to hurricanes. So I don't think there's going to be like we're going to just be one place. I don't think we would be like both in America and in Europe unless part of the game was there's like a big time shift where you go from the United States to Europe or wherever. I think like potentially they could even maybe go to South America.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
yeah, I feel like the only other interesting place in the United States for this world, I think, would either be New York City or somewhere other. The only reason I think that maybe it wouldn't be somewhere not in the United States is that in the final montage of the game, she's talking over the montage of Aaron and Zoe and all them. I forget the exact line, but essentially she's saying, now that we know like what's coming, they're going out to try to find more people to join the cause, I think is how she worded it. So that suggests that they're going to start exploring more of America to try and get as many people as they can together so that we can fight Nemesis in the next game.
That's
But
fair.
I could potentially see that means going overseas as well. But it could just mean like, hey, let's go east and see what's east now, and get more people from the east. Because like, I don't think having a game set in the South, like there's just not a lot geographically, I think that's interesting for a game like this.
Sure.
I mean, setting it in like Texas, Louisiana could be interesting with like swamps and stuff, but I don't like with Infamous 1 going to Infamous 2, which Infamous 2 was like in New Orleans, Infamous 1 was like New York City. Like that was a cool change, but it's just such a smaller scale than the Horizon game. So yeah, really long-winded answer, but
I could see it'd be really cool, like going to a place like England and seeing like the skeleton of Big Ben, or being able to scale the Eiffel Tower. I think would be really cool in Europe.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think there's a way. I mean, depending on how, because a lot of the world is underwater. So you would assume something like Japan potentially could be almost completely underwater.
Sure. Maybe even if the Quinn didn't come from England, England might even be completely underwater.
True. So it's interesting what they're going to set up for the next game.
Yeah.
But probably won't see it for
a while,
5+ years.
Because there's another interesting thought that I saw online. I forget exactly where I saw this, but someone was asking the question, like, do we think the next game, because PlayStation has been very vocal that they want to start leaning more into games as a service, they want to start leaning more into multiplayer. Do we think there is a world in which the Aaron and them going to find more people is their way of like also saying these other people will be other players, and like this could be like a shared world experience maybe? I personally don't think so, but I think it's an interesting concept. I kind of hope they don't do it, because these kinds of games, I prefer being a single player experience. But
yeah, and I think Aloy especially is such a compelling character.
Yeah.
And moving her into a role of like a matriarch,
sure,
instead of like a playable character might not hit.
Yeah. Well, it could be. You know what? Actually, I remember where I heard this. I was speeding through the Kind of Funny spoiler cast, because I wanted to just hear some other people's thoughts before we talked. And one of the places I landed, that's what it was. They were talking about that as an option, and I think it was Greg was like, "Well, what you could do is have it to where the player is always Aloy, but the person that comes into your story comes in like with the face of someone else. So then like if you're Aloy in your game, for me, I'm, let's say, Aaron. In my game, I'm Aloy and you're Aaron. Like maybe something like that could be interesting. But yeah, I don't think that's how they'll go. But I wouldn't be surprised though with how much they want to start bringing in more games as a service and more multiplayer games. That was the whole reason they bought Bungie. But there's one other moment that I really loved, and we can do some final thoughts. It was actually the way that it happened for me. It ended up, it didn't have as much weight as I think it was supposed to. But there's a moment that you might not have even come to in San Francisco. It's along one of the coast areas. It's on this the top of a little like ridge, and there's like what seems to be on this ridge like a memorial set up. And you go and you sit down, and there's like a note there, and Aloy reads it, and it's like honestly a really beautiful moment. It happened to be like sunset time for me, and she essentially, someone had died from the before times, and this was like a little memorial for them, and it was a really touching moment. And then the next story mission I did, Varl dies, and then there's the moment where you have basically that exact same moment but for Varl. And I was like, man, this is weird that they had two of these moments so close to each other. But then I realized that was just, it happened to be my experience. But that first one, before we had the moment with Varl, it was one of those moments where like, these are the kinds of moments I love in these kinds of games, where it's a piece of story that they've written that most players might not even find, but it just has like an emotional punch to your gut that you just happen to come across. these kinds of games, those are the moments I play for. Is those
Mhm.
like you just walk across this really cool piece of story that, again, not everyone's going to find, but if you do find it, you're going to remember it. And
Yeah.
there were a few of those in this game for me. Like I'm a sucker for, especially in the Assassin's Creed games, the old world stuff.
Mhm.
Or rather, in that game, it's the new world stuff. In this game, it is the old world stuff where there's like when you're in Vegas, like seeing what Vegas now looks like and recognizing things and like, oh, this is a casino or this is a hotel. Like those are the kinds of things that I just love, those kinds of moments in these games.
Sure.
And this game from stem to stern was chock full of those moments, much more so than the first game. And I just hope that there's more story content coming because I just want more of those moments because I find that stuff so cool and so fascinating. But yeah, overall, even though I got really heated and yelled, I fucking love this game. And
Sure. Same here.
it's probably in my top like 30. I don't know that it would be in my top 10 because of the ending, but I do think as a whole, I like it more than Zero Dawn, even though I think Zero Dawn stuck its landing way better than this one. Yeah, highly, highly, highly recommend if you're still listening to the spoilers. And before I wrap it up with that, Cayman, do you have any final words on Horizon Forbidden West?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've kind of addressed it. The game, outside of just the absolute ending of the game, everything leading up to that moment is incredible. It's a beautiful game. There's so many moments in that game that elicit emotions from you. Exploring the world, the old world, the new world, meeting all of these characters, these interactions. I don't think we've ever had such well fleshed out NPCs in a game before. And if you're listening to this, I hope you've played it. If you wanted to hear our spoiler thoughts going into this, like it, it's a disservice not to play it because there's so much there that's incredible about the game, and I think it's 100% worth putting that time into it.
I agree. Well, let us know if you did play the game, and if, maybe you're not listening today that we drop this on March 17th. Maybe you're listening to this a few months down the line because you finally beat the game and you bookmarked this episode. I hope you did. Let us know what you thought, even if it's been several months. What worked for you? What didn't? What were your favorite moments? What were your least favorite moments? I'm sure it was how they fucked us with Ted and didn't show us what Ted looked like. And if it's not, you're wrong. But we are at the end of the show, which means it is time to announce the winner of the Elden Ring giveaway. I'm gonna draw this out a little bit, Cayman. I'm gonna use this time to say thank you for listening. Thank you for entering into the contest if you did. If you don't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Well, actually, you have to do that for the giveaway. Although I didn't say Twitter, so follow us on Twitter if you don't. Follow our sister podcast, Save Trash Cinema, on Twitter and Instagram at Save Trash Cinema. Rate us, review us on your podcast, on the podcast app of your choice. If you want to be on the show, mail at spotlightgames.net. If you have topic ideas, those kinds of things, let us know. But we have a winner. We had a record turnout. We had over 60 entrants in this contest.
Incredible.
Unbelievable.
Incredible.
Unbelievable. And I didn't record myself doing it because I hope you trust me, but I was pleased to see that the winner of this game is someone that we know. It is a personal friend. It is a friend of the show. In fact, they have been on our sister show, Save Trash Cinema. And that is our old friend, Cody Lang. Cody, if you're listening, I hope you're listening. Congrats. If you're not listening, I guess you'll just see this on Instagram on Instagram, but I hope you're listening. If you are listening, congratulations. I will be in contact with you to send you a copy or this copy of Elden Ring on PlayStation. And let us know what you think when you play it. And if you didn't win, I'm sorry. We're going to be doing more of these throughout the months. So stick around and maybe you'll win next time. But if you didn't win and you still want to play Elden Ring and let us know your thoughts, I gave you all the ways you can. Instagram, Twitter, mail, all those things. Find my house. Wander the streets of Atlanta. Knock on my door if you find it. Let me know. Or don't. Actually, don't do that. Definitely don't do that.
I think you should do that.
Oh, well, if you think you should. If you think I should. If you think they should. Okay, Cayman, we've reached our conclusion. Thank you for coming on this ride. This was a long one, but I think it was a good one.
It was a good one.
I think it was a juicy one. I think you're a juicy one.
Thank you.
So until we meet again,
Bring it back.
let's bring it back, baby.
Let's